Sawadi was an unfortunate loner who overworked his way into the afterlife, but is given another chance when he reincarnates with powerful healing skills. After enrolling in a magic academy, he meets a busty research supervisor with a rare anti-magic condition. So he heals her, wipes her up, and starts a peaceful life with his MILF wife. It all starts at the Magic Academy where Sawadi bumps into Professor Marino, who has been looking for him. Surprised, he asks what the old man wants. In response, the professor says he heard Sawadi sucks at offensive magic, but makes up for it with his impressive restoration magic. Sawadi then says enrolling in the academy is an amazing feat for a commoner like himself. After this, the professor asks if Sawadi is free to discuss restoring abnormal spines using restoration magic. However, he gets turned down by Sawadi, who then says he has to go home to help his father. While the professor takes his leave, Sawadi sighs in relief, thinking he'd rather donate his sperm factory than take up more work. Since he reincarnated as the third son of the Schenker, a merchant family with political connections, he decides he doesn't want to work as he did in his previous life. As he walks along the streets, he figures he'd have to make a difference in this new world. Just then, he realizes he needs to figure out what to do now since most of his ideas already exist in the new world. While getting a drink, he recalls he's got a cheat skill with his restoration magic. However, as he drinks up, he soon realizes he's screwed since only men with balls to defeat others using offensive magic get to rule. While he strolls, a dragon flies across the sky. Just then it occurs to him that he's the son of a huge business owner, so he decides he's never going back to being an office furniture with a pulse. On a nearby wall, he spots a play poster and checks it out. There and then he decides he'll build a giant theater someday. While staring intently at the poster and daydreaming, he gets struck by an idea and smiles, feeling like Bezos in his element. Just then, Pickle, one of his adventurers, spots him and says he's probably trying to cook something again. In response, Vongo says she hopes he can make it better than the whipped cream and fried potatoes, which ended up as a culinary disaster. Shortly after this, they both approached their master and said their greetings. Sawadi then asks how their day went. Pickles grins and reports that they reached their goal. She then adds that it's payday and hands him a bag of coins. Then Sawadi checks through the bag and realizes his monthly profit is just 2 gold coins after deducting the monthly expenses. After feeling himself for a bit, he realizes there are more expenses and clutches his head. Later, Sawadi asks if his adventurers have any special requests, so Pickle says she'd like some straw betting. The previous year, when Sawadi came up with his plan to buy cheap slaves and take a cut from their work as adventurers, he met with Perseus, a slave merchant who then presented his catalog of defective slave girls. While he surveys the merchandise, Sawadi thinks of healing them with his magic and having them repay him in kind. Just then, Sawadi spots Pickles, a centaur girl with potatoes for eyes and spaghetti for legs, so he decides to buy her. After signing the contracts, his companion asks what he plans to do with the motionless maverick. In response, Sawadi pricks Pickles with a pen and discovers she can't feel the stab. So, he activated his detection magic and concluded it must be a spinal cord injury. Afterward, he places a hand on her back and activates his restoration magic. He then asks Pickles to try to stand. Suddenly, Pickles moved her legs and was surprised it worked. After fixing her, Sawadi thinks she still needs rehabilitation. So Pickles couldn't contain her excitement as she thanked her new master and promised to do her best. Afterward, Sawadi took Pickles home, fed her, and continued her leg treatment. She walks around the yard during the day and Sawadi nurses her with his magic at night. To cater to Pickles' mental health, he washes her body in the bathroom and brushes her coat. A while after, Sawadi visits a workshop with Pickles to pick up her eyeglasses. While he gets lost in her abs and curves, Sawadi wonders how she got so ripped in just 2 weeks. So he pulls a chair for her to sit. Just then, the attendant calls his attention and explains that Pickles' bad eyesight is compensated by her impressive swimming and smelling abilities. Meanwhile, Pickles tries on her glasses and suddenly freaks out. On their way back, Sawadi asks Pickles what the world looks like to her, and she responds with an avalanche of tears. Sometime later, Sawadi prepares Pickles for her first quest as an adventurer. He then hands her a bag of coins and a letter to the receptionist's desk. Pickles thanks him and vows to make him proud. Back to the present, Vongo spots a pack of wolves while flying and throws her darts at them. Simultaneously, Pickles hurls her spear at the wolves and takes them out. On their way back, Pickles says her weapon is a killing machine, while Vongo complains about hers not getting the job done. Pickles then suggests that she informs the ever-selfless Sawadi. Just then, Vongo thinks about Sawadi and wonders why he bought damaged goods like them. Just then she recalls how Sawadi saved her life. Before she was bought, Vongo had small wings and Sawadi had said harpies blood rot when they can't fly. However, he took her home, fed her, and also grew her wings with his magic. After Vongo's wings were fully grown, she hurt herself so many times while learning to fly, but Sawadi healed her each time. Afterward, Vongo perfects her flying and Pickles tells her to get ready to join the guild. Ever since then, she's been working with Pickles as Sawadi's slave. On their way back, they had become popular among the townfolks, so they were greeted by other adventurers and friends. This makes Pickles happy that she lives in Torkova, and then she decides that she wants to be a good role model who can help others. After this, she thinks about her old life as a paralyzed little girl who had to stay outside the house. However, her thoughts are interrupted when Vongo touches her hair and asks if she's okay while they head home. Sometime later, Sawadi heads to the slave shop again with Pickles who can't contain her excitement. Meanwhile, Sawadi recalls his last visit when he was asked if he'd like to sell Pickles. Moments later, Perseus says he has finished the preparations. So, Sawadi decides to buy all 3 slaves. At that moment, Sawadi figures one of the girls is dying. However, he thinks that shouldn't be a problem. Meanwhile, Pickles and the new slaves check out each other while Sawadi thinks of how much he'll earn. Some weeks later, while Sawadi watches the new slaves train, Roast collapses pretending to be dead. However, Mince isn't having any of it. So she tells Roast to get her lazy behind off the floor. Sawadi had taken them home and fixed their defects. Mince is a former soldier and lizard folk with incredible regeneration and resistance to fire and poison. Then there's Roast, a fishman and former adventurer who is quite energetic and strong-willed, although Mince had knocked the fight out of her twice. Lastly, Chicken is a former merchant apprentice who almost died but was healed by Sawadi's magic. She had been sold during her merchant training, so she is as good as a calculator with dead batteries. Fortunately, Sawadi's family's head accountant took an interest in her, so he decided to lend her to him. Later, Chicken tearfully begs Sawadi to spare her from the training while promising to help him with anything. After this, Sawadi limits the training and Roast thanks him for saving her from a certain death. Just then Lazuli shows up and introduces himself. He then says a relief institution where he belongs could use Sawadi's abilities. Meanwhile, Sawadi wonders why he's been getting many such requests, especially from old men. Suddenly, Sawadi requests that someone show his visitor the exit. Just then, Roast shows up and asks if Sawadi needs something. In response, Sawadi says he mistook Lazuli for a guild staff. Immediately, Roast grabs Lazuli and tells him never to return. Then, it occurs to Sawadi that people must take him for a selfless genie, which he finds surprising since they have to work for him afterward. Now Sawadi has 4 adventurers and makes a profit of 10 gold coins after deducting all expenses. While he feels good about his profit, Sawadi realizes he has a long way to go. Several days later, some ladies were brought to Sawadi. One introduces herself as Seal while the other introduces herself as Hunt. Just then, Sawadi was told that they were brought because he needed slaves. Meanwhile, Sawadi wonders what he'd do with them. His idea bulb suddenly lights up, so he asks if they can cook. The duo barely responded when Sawadi employed them as cooks for his adventurers. After this, he tells the girls that they'll help him develop a new dish he plans to sell at a food stall. Meanwhile, Sawadi thinks to himself that none of the girls has the required assets to steal his V card. He then thinks about everything that could go wrong from clapping his new employees. Afterward, Sawadi provides the required ingredients and asks them to get to work. The cooks asked if they were making pasta and Sawadi responded by saying they'll be making it differently. After this, he announced they'd be making spaghetti. After directing them on how to make spaghetti, the ladies fired up while Sawadi recalled his disastrous attempts at cooking. Later that night, while Sawadi reads a book in bed, he wonders what is taking the cooks so long. Suddenly, he heard them scream his name and sat up. The new cooks had finally made spaghetti. On getting to the kitchen, Sawadi rolls up his sleeve and says it's his turn. While talking about his experience, Sawadi picks up garlic and boils the spaghetti. After this, he fries some sliced garlic and adds the pasta to the pan. While he mixed them, the girls marveled. Afterward, Sawadi serves the spaghetti and calls it peperoncino. When they tasted the dish, Sawadi's adventurers joined them while drooling at the aroma. Just then they requested that they make more. Before long, more people were drawn by the aroma. Sometime later at the Magic Academy's engineering lab, A tutor introduces herself as Chris. She then says she's been appointed to tutor a problem student. Facing Sawadi, Chris asks why he joined the research lab. In response, Sawadi says he's interested in cheap working labor. After this, Chris says she'll be teaching him about the basics of creating a magic golem. She then places the ingredients in a test tube and explains the procedure while thinking about her aspirations to work in the capital. Shortly after this, a half-baked ninja turtle was formed. Baffled, Chris wonders what ingredient is missing. However, Sawadi announces that he's made the golem, surprising Chris. Feeling beat at her own game, she wonders how he got it on his first trial. Just then, Sawadi says it's a piece of cake and thanks his dumbstruck tutor for teaching him well. Thinking she might be tutoring a genius, Chris wonders if he knows he's doing great by himself. She then stares at the golem in the tube and questions her existence, while the miniature golem tries to jailbreak. Afterward, Sawadi visits Elder Astoma, a battle hero of the country. There he was commended for his innovative ideas with his slaves and his achievements with engineering magic. Hearing this, Sawadi takes a bow and thanks the old man. On his way out, he reflects on Astoma's magical achievements and marvels at how such an iconic figure took note of a lowly commoner like him. After all, mages are top-rated people in the country and are socially well off than others. Suddenly, someone bumped shoulders with Sawadi and quickly apologized. However, some other guy tells the culprit to ignore him since he's one of the 3 commoners in the school. While they leave, Sawadi thinks he's better off being a commoner since mages dress like they're cosplaying a tax audit. He had only inherited his magic because it's a norm in elite families to keep their mage's bloodline in the family. While strolling along the corridor, someone calls Sawadi, interrupting his thoughts. Just then, he spots Ginny and Ila, his friends and fellow commoners sitting nearby. When he joins them, Ila asks how his result was, so he says he got a passing grade for being unable to use attack magic. When Ginny hears this, he whines about getting a passing grade too despite being able to use attack magic. After a while of discussing their future ambitions, Ginny reminds Sawadi that his organ restoration magic wouldn't serve him as a teacher, but Sawadi responds by saying he already has his own dream. After this, they all agreed to go watch a play to celebrate the end of the term. Later, Sawadi's adventurers jointly attack a bird wyvern, but the tough beast refuses to die. Suddenly, Mince dashes towards the beast to face it head-on, but takes a devastating hit while Roast cringes at the damage done to her arm. However, Mince refuses to back down, so her comrades continue the attack. After a series of attacks, the team defeats the beast and celebrates their victory. Later at night, Sawadi says the bird wyvern was probably bigger than they could handle yet, and commends them for winning in the end. Meanwhile, Roast realizes their master retained them after healing them because he's raising a personal army. Thinking about the nature of mages, she recalls her face-off with an expelled mage from the academy where her teammates were turned into human popsicles. After being half-frozen herself, she had ripped open his throat using her teeth. Roast then concludes that she'd better be on Sawadi's good side since mages are a bunch of lunatics. Just then, Vongo pulls Sawadi and asks to be praised for their work. In response, Sawadi gives her a candy for doing her best. Some days later, while the adventurers hunt a red-cheek fox, they were suddenly intercepted by an armored longhorn beetle which scared the hell out of them. Seeing this, Roast orders Vongo to dial 911 and Pickles to fire a flash grenade, so Pickles rolls out the bombs. After the explosion, the beast comes charging out of the smoke like the undead and Mince frantically asks if the cavalry has arrived. Suddenly, something large sweeps over the girls and knocks down the monster. So, Roast asks Mince if she's okay, and she says she's fine but one of her arms is missing. While Roast wonders what just happened, Mince says it's the Chilveric Order's White Dragon Knight, known as Arcelica the Stardust, who knocked down the beast. Roast then helped her walk and bandaged her arm, while her teammates came around to help. Unbothered, Arcelica flies away on her ride, while the adventurers head home in defeat. Later, while Mince eats, she asks Sawadi what the white sauce thing on her plate is, and he says it's his specialty mayonnaise. Her arm has grown back properly, so she practices how to use chopsticks with it. While enjoying her meal, Mince feels like it is her birthday and blushes while wondering if she should share with her friends. However, shortly after this, the plates were emptied. The next day was Thanksgiving, so the town square was packed with people celebrating and having fun. In one of the stalls, Seal takes customers' orders and serves the pasta, while Mince stands absent-mindedly. Just then, Seal spots Mince staring at the pocket watch Sawadi gifted her and wonders why she's so obsessed with it. Her thoughts were interrupted by Roast, who then told her to get ready. So, Hunt clears her throat and announces on a megaphone that they'll be performing a stage play. Her announcement gathered some attention, which made Seal feel nervous and recall the rehearsals of their stage play where Sawadi played the movie director and showed her how to play her role. So the play begins with Mince placing an order and Seal attending to her order, while the audience watches in silence. While they act, Seal thinks Sawadi must be a genius for planning a stage play to attract customers to the stall and to promote his business. After this, Mince pays a coin less for her order by performing a trick. Just then, Roast, who had been watching the scene, appeared on stage wondering what was going on. After thinking about it, she figures out Mince's trick and decides to try it out too. While the bewildered crowd watches on, Roast visits Pickles' stall and places an order too. Meanwhile, Seal admires Roast and Pickles' acting and flashes back to the rehearsals when she couldn't get her part right. Pickles had handed her some snacks while she munched on it and forgot her acting skills, which sucked. To step it down, Roast handed her a glass which she drank from, and was shocked to realize it contained booze. Roast had sealed her lips with her finger and told her to enjoy it since she'd been doing the same all day. Just then, Seal looked around and noticed Vongo, who gave her a thumbs up since she had a glass of spirits too. Back to the present, Roast says she's full and requests for her bill. After this, she tries to use the trick on Pickles, but the trick works against her and drives the audience crazy. Amidst the cheers of the crowd, the adventurers turned actors take a closing bow and feel good about working together. Sometime later at an event, Sawadi stands before an audience and announces that he'll be holding an inauguration ceremony for each of the executive positions of his clan of adventurers named the Magical Schenker Group. He had decided to start a new business, so he bought a ruined factory at a cheap price and bought injured slaves whom he healed using his magic. His new band of misfits was a mixture of a variety of talents. Now that he has more adventurers, he divides them into 3 groups and has his former adventurers lead them. At the inauguration ceremony, Sawadi calls forward the slaves who will assume office and designates Mince as the captain of the clan, Roast as the vice captain, Pickle as the squad leader, and Vongo as her vice. Afterward, they celebrated the inauguration and many gifts were brought for Pickles and Vongo. The peperoncino was served as the main dish and the crowd went haywire while Sawadi watched and sipped his drink. While the slaves get drunk with the crowd, Sawadi realizes they've built friendships with the people of the city and feels lonely. The next day, at the Magic Engineering Lab, Professor Marino examines Sawadi's golem and commends him for making another amazing creation. Feeling jealous, Chris says it's only a product of a merchant's greed. In response, Marino says Sawadi's commoner thinking is something they could learn from. While they discuss the complexities of how to make artificial beasts on a large scale, Professor Marino suggests that they make modular-type artificial beasts which only require replacements of their magic crystals when they get spent. Impressed by Professor Marino's thinking, Sawadi thinks he must understand the value of optimization and cost reduction. After this, Professor Marino asks if Sawadi would like to start his student research project. But Chris objects to this and says it's too soon. However, Professor Marino asks her to supervise him and take care of him. When asked if he would like his name on the paper, Sawadi says he doesn't. So, Chris reluctantly agrees to this while Sawadi smiles, thinking he has no interest in becoming famous. It was then decided that Chris' name would be on the paper instead. After 2 years, the research led to the creation of modular-type dragons, and Sawadi's supervisors were called to the capital where they would continue the research. Meanwhile, Sawadi thought he'd enjoy a happy life now that the research was off his neck. But Professor Marino soon took interest in his latest creation. An artificial beast that gets its energy from absorbing magicules from the air, which he accidentally invented while trying to reduce production costs. When Sawadi asks if they could publish his discovery, Professor Marino says he can't since he has no supervisor. However, Professor Marino promises to get someone from outside and tells Sawadi to quit worrying that he'd be sent to the capital. Feeling relieved, Sawadi thanks Professor Marino and says such an invention is way beyond his pay grade. He then announces that he has to go to work and leaves Professor Marino to deal with the rest. Later that day inside his headquarters, some digging was going on. While his slaves did the work, Sawadi stared at a plan with one of his employees. He realized his current income couldn't build a sandcastle and talk more of a theater, so in order to make more money, he dug a secret tunnel that connected to a dungeon outside the city. His plan is to create beasts that generate magic crystals and consequently create a magic crystal factory. However, the yield was worse because of the thin magicules in the air, so he decided to use the thick magicules of the dungeon. While his workers bust their asses digging the tunnel, Sawadi thinks of the high price his idea would fetch. Just then he realizes he needs to keep his slaves motivated, so he speaks into a megaphone and tells them to see him if they need regeneration and enchantment buffs. He also adds that he's prepared bottles of booze for them. Meanwhile, Sawadi has also opened a fancy coffee shop to make more money and to cater to the welfare of his slaves. He also ensured that his slaves who worked as cast members of the cafe were dressed in cute uniforms. The next morning, when the cafe opened, a stream of customers trooped in, and before long, they were all attended to. Feeling relieved that the morning busy hour is over, one of the slave girls wonders how Chicken handled the job all by herself before. She then observes that Chicken isn't at work, but is told that it's her day off. Meanwhile, while Chicken enjoys her day off, she observes it's now a status symbol in the city to sit outdoors and wear fancy outfits. While aspiring to be like these top dogs, an attendant walks up to her and apologizes for keeping her waiting. So, Chicken looks at the attendant and discovers she's Elaf, the new rabbit folk. Elaf then asks if it's her day off, and Chicken replies saying she plans to enjoy the city for a bit. She'd heard rumors that 5 men were hitting on Elaf and was envious since her DMS lacked traffic. Shortly after, Chicken goes on a shopping spree to upgrade her wardrobe. Then she realizes it costs an arm and a leg to rock designers. She suddenly remembers she's still a slave and decides to control herself. When she returns home, she bumps into Roast, who then reminds her that she already has a ton of clothes similar to the ones she just bought. However, Chicken made some silly excuses saying the lining and materials are different. While Roast insinuates that she's got the same fashion sense as their master, Chicken spots a Gucci logo on Roast's outfit and freaks out. When she asks if Roast bought them, Roast says she's uninterested in fashion, but gets her clothes as gifts from different guys. Overwhelmed by jealousy, Chicken dashes out wishing even a mannequin would notice her, so she determines to attract suitors by owning a clothing shop and making lots of money. Meanwhile, at the Magic Academy, Professor Marino had found a new supervisor for Sawadi. While he walks along the corridors thinking about this, someone asks if he's Schenker. Hearing this, he turns to look and sees some sheik dressed like a general. She introduces herself as Lola and adds that she'll be starting as a researcher in his lab. Afterward, at the theater, Sawadi and Lola bump into each other. So he asks if she likes to watch plays too, and she responds by saying she was always busy during her military days, but has a lot of free time now. She's a 21-year-old ex-army researcher who's taller than Sawadi. However, he wonders if it's really a coincidence to meet her at the same theater 3 times in a row. So he offers to show her around the city, and she accepts his offer. Shortly after this, they sit at the cafe where Lola shares some post-military days anecdotes which Sawadi finds amusing. Meanwhile, Sawadi suspects that she might be an investigator trying to get close to a commoner like him because she's found out about the crystal factory. They had explored the city together and ended up at the cafe where Lola burned through butts of cigarettes. While she lights another one, Sawadi wonders how many people she's killed. Lola then asks him about his preferred story type, making him think deeply to avoid creeping her out. He then says he likes the expelled stories, a genre invented by Mejias, a genius screenwriter. Coincidentally, Lola says she knows him and has met him before at a party. Before Sawadi could begin playing 20 questions about the screenwriter, Lola gestures that she has to leave. Just then, Sawadi realizes how much time has passed. So Lola suggests that they reschedule the discussion and Sawadi reluctantly agrees. She then grabs his shoulder and whispers in his ears that the day was fun. While she leaves, Sawadi watches her like a love-sick puppy. Throughout the week, Sawadi couldn't stop thinking about the legendary screenwriter. However, he had to refrain from asking Lola in the research lab. The following week, Sawadi welcomes Lola to his shop and impatiently pulls her in. When she asks why he's being impatient, Sawadi places an order for 2 cups of coffee and says he's done waiting to get some. So, they sit at a table and Lola tells him all he wants to know over coffee. After this, she asks if that's all he'll be needing her for, but Sawadi immediately apologizes for making her feel that way. In response, she says he's quite different from what she's heard from his supervisors who moved to the capital. She then adds that he's just a boy researcher who is into theater as a hobby and asks if he's the one who made the modular type artificial beast. Sawadi realizes his secret about the factory is safe and gets excited while Lola says she understands his reason for living low-key. She then adds that the country wants him to become a nobleman as a reward for minimizing military spending through his research. Surprised to hear this, Sawadi tries to figure out what to say, but Lola beats him to it and says she'll become his spouse. Shocked to hear this, Sawadi realizes that's what she means by becoming a noble man. While the maids eavesdrop, Sawadi asks if her family will be cool with her getting married to a commoner. In response, she tells him not to worry since she's been kicked out of the house for ruining her magic organ from overusing it. Because of this, she can neither use magic nor pass it to her offspring. Hearing this, Sawadi blushes and says he can heal her magic organ. Lola suddenly turns white when she hears this, so she freaks out and spills coffee all over Sawadi. While the attendants worry about their master, Lola apologizes and says she's more interested in him now. So, she asked him if he agreed to the marriage proposal. Just then, Sawadi realizes he's at ease and his eyes off her pleasure mounds. Just then, Sawadi looks away and says he can't wait to watch the show. Meanwhile, Lola smiles, knowing her cleavage was working its magic on the poor wanker. When they arrive at the packed theater, they sit together, and while Sawadi enjoys the play, Lola can't get enough of his cuteness. Afterward, they visit the shop and are served novel dishes, none of which Lola has ever seen. When she tries out the dishes, Lola suddenly lights up like a supernova and gives Sawadi a head rub while the attendants watch. On their way out, Mince informs Sawadi that his ride is ready while Lola marvels at his number of troops. When she asks if he's making his own army, Sawadi says they only collect magic crystals for him. However, Lola thinks they seem trained for other things too, so she tries to attack Sawadi but gets blocked by Mince. Impressed by this, she taps Mince's shoulder and commends their reaction while wondering why a slave would be willing to die for her master. Meanwhile, Sawadi fidgets for almost getting whacked in the face. Some days later, Sawadi explains how the magic organ gathers magicules in space and stores them inside the organs. The magicules are then used by mages to create magic used for fighting, restoration, writing, and lighting fires. After this, he adds that overusing the organ can destroy it and end a mage's career. Bored with the lecture, Lord Qualis asks him to show him if he could really restore a magic organ. While Lola lies on a surgery table between them, Sawadi apologizes and commences the surgery. 2 weeks before then, Sawadi had discussed the magic organ restoration technique with Lola, and she told him what to expect afterward. She gave him 3 options on what to do with his knowledge of the procedure, and he decided to make the treatment available only to the veterans. After the surgery, Lord Qualis confirms that Lola's magical power is returning. He is an appraisal mage who Lola had invited from the capital to act as a trusted eyewitness. While they chat over coffee, Qualis tells him to stop worrying and let his fiancée handle the people at the capital's military headquarters. In response, Sawadi insinuates that the military should be happy to regain their personnel using the treatment. However, Qualis explains that the pain of losing a magic organ could kill its victims, except those with strong will like Lola. Lola, who had been awake and listening, then asks if he's trying to make her blush. She then sits up and fiddles with her magic. While Sawadi and Qualis watch her, she brings out a cigarette and lights it up with a snap of her finger. Impressed by her use of magic, Sawadi watches her let out a cloud of smoke, but he freezes when she thanks him. While he blushes, she opens her arms and invites him for a hug. To avoid being blinded by love, Qualis tells them to respect his presence. However, tells the old man to let young people express their love, while Sawadi almost wets his pants because of the awkwardness. Just then, Qualis announces that the patients will visit one by one to be treated secretly. On his way out, Qualis checks with Sawadi to know if he's on board with the arrangement and adds that he'll let him know when a patient is coming. After Qualis' departure, Sawadi checks out Lola's medals and wonders how many war merits she's received. Sometime later, Mr. Gossin, a war veteran, narrates how he had lost his magic organ on the battlefield and was forced to retire. However, he was visited by a former superior who confidently told him that there was a way to restore his magic organ. So he secretly traveled down to Torkova and his wife wheeled into Sawadi's home. Sawadi's young appearance gave them doubts, but they hoped since they had no other options. So Sawadi begins his diagnosis and decides it's best to restore his overall health first. After doing this, Mr. Gossin's missing teeth were restored and he could eat a healthy diet. A week later, Mr. Gossin tells his wife that he'd first smoke a 10-year-old cigar after his magic organ is restored. In response, she asks if he'd like to visit any place, and while they plan their vacation, Sawadi interrupts and asks if they need the room. After teasing the couple for a while, Sawadi asks if he's ready for his magic organ to be restored. Shortly after the procedure, Mr. Gosen pulls out his 10-year-old cigar and lights it while his wife watches amazed. After several bouts of coughing, Mr. Gosen and his wife wept and thanked Sawadi. While they prepare to leave, they promise to bring a gift for him next time. But Sawadi tells them not to worry and watches them leave in a carriage. On his way back, Sawadi thinks of buying the buildings on top of his tunnel with the money he just made. So he figures he'd let Chicken handle that and thinks of starting a fish farm. On entering the house, he thinks about his postal service business and concludes it's doing fine. Meanwhile, Lola watches him mumbling and pacing while talking to himself. Just then, Sawadi switches to demon mode while fantasizing about controlling money circulation in 3 cities. Suddenly, Lola resets him with a knock and tells him he looks like a cosmetic surgery gone wrong. With his factory settings restored, Sawadi asks if he really looked that scary and Lola says he'd be stoned to death if he stepped out looking like that. She then adds that he should go easy on the deep thinking. Meanwhile, at the shop, the last customer leaves and Mamoy wraps up for the day. Just then, Nava walks in with some food from the headquarters. She suddenly notices they've sold more incense stands and says she wants to get better at painting wooden handicrafts so that they won't ever be sold as slaves again. Shortly after, while they work, the slaves talk about their master's new fish business and the purchase of a building above the tunnel. Just then, Nava says it'd be nice to go to the headquarters using the tunnel. However, Mamoy reminds her that it's a secret op. When they close the shop, the girls go down into the tunnel where they chat about the adventurers and fantasize about joining them. However, Mamoy thinks being an adventurer is dangerous and says she loves what she does. While they chat, the slaves working the tunnel walk past them and Yalen asks if Mamoy is working late. Mamoy responds by saying she's done for the day but enjoys spending time there. As they leave, Yalen tells Mamoy not to overwork herself, and at that moment, Nava bids her goodbye and leaves too. Just then, some other slaves came along and found Mamoy sitting in the tunnel, so they joined her. Later at the research lab, Professor Marino announces that the capital has granted them a generous amount of research grant for a project. Hearing this, Sawadi lights up with surprise and checks out the proposal for the utilization of a magical perpetual engine. He had mindlessly put it together to increase Lola's research credit, and now he has been instructed to construct a long-distance demonstration from Torkova to Luvuma. While thinking, Professor Marino suggests that they start the project immediately, shocking Sawadi, who then asks him when the deadline is. Professor Marino replies by saying they have only 3 months, shocking Sawadi again. In the following weeks, Marino's lab and life were in shambles as he always had so much to do and places to be. As for Sawabi, he receives a course exemption from Elder Astoma so he can spend his miserable nights and days researching with other researchers. 1 month later, Sawadi and Marino test run the prototype model of their engine, but it gets stopped by a pebble. So they console each other with the fact that it's just a prototype, yet it moves. Sawadi then deduces that the engine has a low output because it's super low in cost. Considering how far they've come, Marino asks if the engine could really power a train and Sawadi says the train engine will be just like that of the prototype. After this, they both analyze how to increase the output of the engine. After a session of scientific frustration, they both agree that the small turn of their wheel is a big turn in the advancement of magic engineering. After that chaotic 3 months pass, Sawadi stands holding a cup in the lab and stares out the window while his fellow researchers lay on the floor. The perpetual train is completed, so Sawadi and Marino check out the train, feeling accomplished. Shortly after, some VIPs from the military board the train to witness its demonstration. While the demonstration commenced, Sawadi was disappointed since they couldn't solve the output problem. But he wasn't bothered since the capital city researchers could figure it out after the demonstration. When Marino starts the train, the meters work perfectly, so he nervously announces that the train is leaving. However, the train refuses to move an inch even after 15 minutes. Unsurprised, Sawadi stares out the window while Marino panics and fidgets. Just then, one of the guests points out that the train isn't moving and Sawadi reassures him that it just feels that way. After a while, the train moves at a decent speed, reducing the awkwardness on the train and the tension on Marino. During the journey, Sawadi plays cards with some of the guests and soon shows them who's boss, while Lola smiles. Suddenly, some giant bugs were spotted flying in the sky, and the pedestrians attacked them using magic. When the train arrived at Luvuma City, the officers commended Sawadi, Marino, and Lola. After this, the perpetual train research as well as the draft of its engine were taken over by the capital city. Then, the Transcontinental Railroad was named after Marino, who then freaks out and hugs Sawabi while flooding his glasses from the excitement. Afterward, some people marveled when they spotted Sawadi and Lola riding a horse with horns and 8 legs. Feeling embarrassed, Sawadi covers his face and blames the stupid-looking horse. Shishriki, Sawadi's second older brother, had begged him to make him a flashy and crazy fast horse. To convince Sawabi, he offers to give him a slave who used to play a leading role in a famous theater, so he agrees. Now, Sawabi, Lola, and his adventurers are out test driving the horse for Shishriki. When they take a break, Lola says she likes the horse and asks Sawadi to make one for her, and he agrees without hesitation. After this, he asks Lola why she made him wear shorts when he's almost 15. In response, Lola says she likes the way he looks in it, making him cover his face in embarrassment. Just then, the rest of the adventurers arrive on their horses and set up a mini-camp. While Sawadi drinks from a cup and Lola smokes a cigarette, Vongo spots a monster in the sky and alerts the team. Immediately, Mince confirms it with her scope and advises Sawadi and Lola to escape from the incoming Titan centipede. Hearing this, Sawadi orders Vongo to call for help. Meanwhile, Lola asks Mince to hold her cigarette and walks towards the centipede. With a single wave of her arm, Lola makes a barbecue of the centipede and returns to the awestruck stares of her companions. After this, she drags Sawadi closer and checks her pocket looking for her cigarette, so Mince gives it back to her while complimenting her bravery. Meanwhile, Sawadi calmly rests his head on Lola's lap, while the adventurers ask her to tell them about her battle experiences. Some days later, Sawadi feels like he has something to do, but isn't sure what it is, so he chalks it down to the side effect of being idle. So he visits his brother and finds him playing Father of the Year. Surprised to see this, Sawadi asks if he is finally back on the market for Bachelor 2.0, but his brother asks him to mind his speech around the kids. He then says it's his duty as the head of the family since his wife went to a tea party with the neighborhood housewives. While Sawadi laughs at his brother, his niece grabs him and asks him to play with her. Just then, his brother reminds him that he's almost an adult and should start thinking of starting a family. A few moments later, Sawadi shows up at the headquarters and meets Hunt. She asks if he needs something, and he says he's thinking of developing a new menu. While they discuss the details, some slaves chat about Chicken's stylish look and lack of a boyfriend. So they poked fun at each other's miniature melons and drew Sawadi's attention. Simultaneously, Chicken joins the conversation and says they could only enjoy themselves as slaves because their master allows it while pointing to Sawadi. The slaves suddenly look at Sawadi, surprised to see him there, while he feels awkward. After this, somewhere down the tunnel, Chicken and Sawadi check out the magic crystal factory and he instructs her to store the produced magic crystals. While feeling accomplished for completing the tunnel, Sawadi checks out the produced crystals and suggests that the size be reduced since it's slightly larger than the one on the market. While Chicken takes notes, Sawadi stares at her surprised. When she notices this, she asks if something's wrong and Sawadi says it's nothing important. However, he suddenly remembers his brother's advice and decides to do something about it. After a while, many of the slaves gather at the headquarters and chat when Sawadi mounts the stage. He then thanks the slaves for their work and announces that he'll be getting married soon, so he gives them the right to find happiness and make a family. However, he adds that he can't free them completely from slavery, because the clan has a lot of trade secrets that need to be kept. In addition to this, Sawadi promises to put slaves who have been with him for over 3 years on a payroll. So he calls Pickles, Vongo, Mince, Roast, and Chicken to designate them as retired slaves and to award them medals. Suddenly, Mince bends on a knee and says she'll continue to devote herself as an adventurer to repay Sawadi's kindness. Just then, Roast joins them and says she'll be happy to receive a raise since she's also staying in the clan. While Mince and Roast throw a tantrum, Vongo pulls Sawadi's coat and says she'll keep doing her best. Sawadi gives her a head rub, but suddenly gets a hug from Pickles who says she's staying too and almost crushes the life out of him. Just then, Sawadi realizes what it means to be the head of a family. Later that day, Sawadi tells Lola all about his day, and she says there is never a dull moment with him and his slaves. Just then she checks out the eternal magic crystal she took from him. Unlike the normal magic crystals, this crystal absorbs magicules and allows it to be used multiple times, making it useful for many appliances. He had planned to keep it a secret because of its massive impact on society, but Lola suspected him and demanded to see what he was hiding in his pocket. Just then, Lola insinuates that they'll receive less research funding from the country if the crystal makes consumables last forever, so she suggests that Sawadi discuss the matter with Professor Marino. While still thinking about it, she suggests that they limit the crystal and only make it usable a few times. Impressed by the idea, Sawadi says they could give the crystal a lifespan since it is made from artificial beasts. When he thanks Lola and decides to implement it, she stares at him intently and says he's still keeping something else from her. Sawadi suddenly grows tense, so Lola says that she has always felt something off about him and his aura, which is similar to that of a dead person. After this, she asks if he has escaped death once before and insinuates that he is a reincarnator. In response, Sawadi asks if she's trying to make him laugh and adds that such a thing can't happen. To his surprise, his eyes were flooded with tears, so he suddenly covered his face while Lola watched him. When he stops crying, Lola asks him about where he died since he's never stepped foot on a battlefield. So, Sawadi grips his shirt and says she won't understand even if he tells her. However, at that moment, he realizes he wants to tell Lola everything. A part of him tried to dissuade him from doing so, but Lola held his hands and promised to accept whatever he said. With tears in his eyes, Sawadi reveals that he's from another world while Lola beams with a smile and hugs him under the moonlight. Sometime later, during an equipment audit, Jillian wonders why Pickles borrowed a lot of the clan equipment when she should have more of hers. So Pickles says Chicken picks the equipment for the adventurers. Then she unsheaths a large sword she bought herself. After this, Jillian inspects other weapons that Pickles claims she keeps for keepsake. Finally, she shows a dagger she had gotten as a gift from Sawadi during the inauguration. When Jillian asks if that's her most treasured keepsake, Pickles responds saying it's her joy and pride. After the audit, Jillian sits at a fountain while munching a snack and is lost in thought. Just then a friend joins her and hands her a cup of coffee. After this, Jillian's friend sits with her and asks if the snack was any good, and she responds by saying it was. When her friend asks if it really is tiring to work in management, Jillian says she's done for the day but has tons of work to do the following day. She then adds that Sawadi wants to make a brewery and she's been unable to find a property for the brewery yet. It's hard to get a good place because Sawadi has bought most of the properties and people are moving into the city. So Jillian asks her friend if she knows any good place for sale. After thinking for a while, her friend says she doesn't. Disappointed by this, Jillian rants about working in management, while her friend makes fun of her and calls her an airhead who gets scolded for making mistakes. Hearing this, Jillian worries that she'll be sold off soon. Her friend suddenly gets called to get back to work, so she waves Jillian off and leaves. On her way back, she remembers a place that might be up for sale and tells Jillian to give it a look. Shortly after, Jillian walks around a quiet neighborhood looking for the place and wondering if she's lost. When she begins to think she's been tricked by her friend, Jillian finds the place and figures it has the right size and location. On entering the place, she finds an old man sitting and wonders if he's the one her friend told her about. She had said an old stubborn man manages the place and turns buyers away at the gate. Just then, she reluctantly says hello to the old man and introduces herself. In addition to this, she says she's heard rumors about the place and would like to talk to him. Suddenly, the old man collapses while she wonders what she did to trigger the poor Santa. Suddenly, Jillian gets help, and the man is immediately rushed to the headquarters where Sawadi treats him using his magic. Meanwhile, Jillian sits outside beating herself up for what happened. When Sawadi finds her, he tells her the old man is alright and explains that he had a chronic disease that got worse suddenly. To make her feel better, Sawadi rubs her head and tells her it's not her fault. He then adds that negotiating for the land has been made easy because she saved the old man. However, Jillian worries that she'll be sold, but Sawadi reassures her that he'll never sell her over a trivial matter like that. Coincidentally, Chicken walks in on the scene and asks Sawadi if he did something to her. Shortly after, Chicken talks to Jillian in her office and asks if she's calm. With a sullen look, Jillian asks why she's placed in management. She then adds that she wishes she could be like everyone else who likes their job and is better at it. In response, Chicken leans on a desk and says she knows how Jillian feels because she's been there. She couldn't do her job right, lacked self-confidence, and feared she'd be sold. Chicken goes on to explain that she watched the others do their best to protect where they belonged. But her thinking changed when her workload increased, and she barely had time to think about all that. After narrating her story, Chicken drops her cup and says if Jillian doesn't like her current job, she can always give her a different one. Chicken then reassures Jilin that she'll never be sold away for such a trivial matter, to ease her worry. So, Jilin points out that Sawadi told her the same thing earlier and insinuates that Chicken and Sawadi must trust each other since they have the same mind. In response, Chicken says she's not sure whether or not to take that as a compliment. Hearing this, Jilin reminds her of all of Sawadi's achievements. But the unimpressed Chicken insinuates that there's more to Sawadi than he's letting on. In addition to this, she says if Sawadi trusted any of them, he would have shown them his real face much sooner. So all they could do was wait for the day when he finally showed them his real face. However, when he eventually showed his real face, it was shown to someone who had removed his walls. In conclusion, Chicken smiles and says their master is problematic. Meanwhile, Chicken's expression reminds Jilin of Pickle's expression at the equipment audit. Just then, Chicken says she has to head somewhere and advises Jilin to go home and get some rest, because she'll be needed at her best for the next day's work. After Chicken leaves, Jilin thinks about what she said and wonders why her expression and Pickles look genuine and yet carry a hint of loneliness. However, Jilin concludes she can't understand it, so she worries about the busy day ahead. Several days later, Jilin tries to open a room door and recalls the moment Sawadi invited her to join the executives for an alcohol tasting. Thinking she's about to be acknowledged as super talented, she turns the doorknob and enters the room saying she's honored to be invited. However, in the room were drunk executives and a stench of alcohol. So Sawadi says she's late and explains that he made the booze using magic engineering. He then asks her to try some while she freaks out. Later that night, Lola drinks from a glass of Sawadi's booze, which he had named Lola Rola after his fiancée. She then comments that she likes the drink more because Sawadi made it and asks if he has plans to sell it. However, Sawadi was more concerned with their wedding preparations. He then added that the liquor could be made more easily when the brewery is ready. While Lola drinks from the glass, Sawadi stares intently at the wedding plans. So Lola asks if he's trying to memorize the guests' names. In response, Sawadi says he'll become a noble soon and doesn't want to call their names wrongly. Hearing this, Lola asks to see the names and puts her cigarette in an ashtray. She then joins Sawadi on the couch and explains that some of the names are retired soldiers he has treated. While explaining who the guests are, Lola stumbles on a name and is shocked. Sawadi notices this and curiously calls her name. Suddenly, Lola shuts the book and says she sees a name that takes her back to her military days. So she picks up her cigarette and continues smoking while talking about the person. Lola explains that she's like a rival who is a valorous airwoman and they had promised to attend each other's weddings. With a snap of her finger, Lola adds that she'll surprise this rival with her magic, while Sawadi tells her not to cause any trouble. After this, he asks if any of her family members are coming for the wedding since they live in the capital city. Hearing this, Lola smiles and explains that her brother serves in the army while her parents live in a territory at the border. So Sawadi asks what her hometown is like, and she explains that it's close to the sea and they get to fish all year round. When Lola says she doesn't resent her family, Sawadi asks why her family is not supportive of her. Lola responds by saying they've got a lot of responsibility and things to keep. When Lola empties her glass, Sawadi calls her and says he hopes they can be a happy family. He then apologizes for being a theater freak when he gave her conditions earlier, but Lola responds, suggesting that they do their best to make it happen. After this, Sawadi announces that he wants to have 5 children, shocking Lola, who then stutters trying to figure out what to say. The wedding day arrives and the musicians do their thing while the guests troop into the venue. While the guests exchange pleasantries, the bride and groom chat backstage where Lola teases Sawadi for not wearing the shorts she had prepared. She then asks about Sawadi's family, and he says they send their congratulations while his father cried. Just then, Sawadi says his stomach hurts from being nervous, so Lola reminds him that he's still got his advanced healing magic. The time to walk the aisle came, so they held hands and walked into the hall while the audience applauded them in a standing ovation. After they took their seats, a retired general was called to give a speech, so every soldier stood to salute. While the general approaches the podium to give his speech, Sawadi wonders what's going on. So the general clears his throat and speaks briefly about Lola and Sawadi's achievements. Meanwhile, Sawadi looks at his wife to be like he's seen a ghost while she shakes her head. After listing Sawadi's achievements, the general says none of it was made public to protect him. Just then, he says it's only natural for the country to reward him, and the audience cheers in approval. So, Sawadi was called forward and handed some medals. On returning to his seat, Lola apologizes for keeping him out of the loop. After this, Elder Astoma and Professor Marino congratulate Sawadi on finally making it out of the trenches. At that moment, someone calls Sawadi doctor and congratulates him on his marriage. When he turns to look, it turns out to be a much younger looking Mr. Gosson and his wife. Just then, many of his other patients come around to congratulate him. Meanwhile, while Lola chats with her former colleagues, someone shows up and calls her attention. Turning to her, Lola says hello to Iha, who then says she thought Lola would be in the slums since she lost her magic organ. With an air of confidence, Lola puts a cigarette in her mouth and says she's sorry to disappoint Iha. Suddenly, she snapped her finger and lit her cigarette while winking at Iha. Shocked by this, Iha realizes Sawadi must have fixed her damaged magic organ. So she asks Lola about her plans to return to the military since their rivalry is still on. However, Lola says she's never returning to the military, calling attention in the process. Just then, Sawadi hops in between them and says he'll protect his wife from ever returning to the battlefield, surprising Lola. Turning to Lola, Sawadi pleads with her never to return to the battlefield regardless of what happens to the country. However, their sweet moment is interrupted by Ihia, who asks Sawadi if he's ever killed anyone, and he responds saying he hasn't but can protect Lola using his inventions and healing magic. Just then, Ihia makes fun of Sawadi and gets furious, so she activates her magic and attacks Sawadi. But the attack was blocked by the soldiers who he had treated. Despite being outnumbered, Ihia refuses to back down, so she calls the soldiers losers who ran away from the battlefield. While Sawadi fidgets, Ihia charges up again and challenges the soldiers to come at her at once. At that moment, the hall was charged up and ready to explode. Suddenly, Elder Astoma silences everyone with a spell and tells them to behave themselves since it's a celebration. After this, the soldiers salute him and apologize, so the part continues. Meanwhile, Lola compliments her miniature husband for standing up for her. As they wrap up the celebration, the crowds cheer them on as the couple make their vows and lock lips. After the wedding, the newlyweds begin their lives, so Sawadi moves in with Lola and is welcomed by the maids. With some load on his shoulders, Sawadi thanks them and says he hopes they get along. Shortly after this, Sawadi was led to his room where marvels at the luxurious space he will now call home. Just then, he decides to check out the closet while feeling nervous about being married. On opening the closet, he couldn't believe his eyes. Later, at the headquarters, Sawadi reveals that his closet was filled with tons of shorts. He then adds that he would have loved to get a house now that he's married, but he had just taken a loan to buy land for the theater. After listening to him rant, Chicken says like a proper side chick that he doesn't have to force himself to live with Lola if he's not satisfied with it. She then suggests that he could commute to her house or live in a separate room from her since he still has to attend school and work. In response, Sawadi says he thinks so too, but then he flashes back to Lola saying she doesn't want a marriage if they can't be together. So he asks Chicken if she thinks Lola is cute, and she responds, saying she is. Chicken in turn asks him why he came to work, and he says he came to brag. Just then, Roast barges in and asks if Chicken could handle some bills for her. Surprised to see Sawadi, she greets him and he waves at her. While Chicken takes the bills, she tells Roast to knock before coming in next time, so Roast apologizes. After examining the bills, Chicken says some of the bills can't be passed through because the month has been really tight. Meanwhile, Sawadi watches like a dumb NPC while Roast pleads with her. After this, Sawadi says he's got some money-making gig for Roast and asks if she's interested. A few moments later, Roast, Chicken, and Seal stand, wondering what Sawadi is up to. He then suddenly unveils 3 strange-looking eggs, making the ladies wonder if it vibrates. Then, he explains that they're the new species of artificial beasts that he's made. While the girls wonder what this has got to do with them, Sawadi asks them why they didn't even pretend to be excited. In response, they ask if they're becoming his lab rats, and he instructs them to input a magic crystal into the bottom of the egg. Suddenly, the eggs were hatched and a dog, a cat, and a monkey came out of them. Just then, Sawadi explains that he wants them to raise and observe the pets because he recently discovered at his parents' house that the bicorn he made as a trial has developed consciousness somehow. In addition to this, Sawadi suggests that they could name, train, and feed the pets with magic crystals. After this, he reveals that he's also taking care of a small flying dragon named Torf in his home and hands them some reports to fill in weekly. When the ladies agree to do as instructed, Sawadi says they might sell the pets in the future, but need to research artificial beast consciousness for the time being. Later at the house, lunch is served. but Sawadi stares at it like it's cow dung. However, he eats quietly with Lola, while the maid feeds Tofu. Shortly after, Lola smokes a cigarette and stares out the window. While Sawadi plays with Tofu, Lola points out that he doesn't seem to enjoy the lunch. In response, Sawadi says it was delicious, but it's just not the right pick for summer. When Lola asks if it is different from what he has back home, Sawadi says it is different from what he eats back in his previous world. Lola then picks a book and asks about what food he eats during summer there. So Sawadi responds saying he has something cold and refreshing, capable of quenching the throat. While Sawadi wonders if he should make one of those foods, Lola grabs him by the shoulder and suggests that they go try to make the food. A few moments later, the couple arrives at Sawadi's family home to get the ingredients. Just then, the head clerk goes into the storehouse with Sawadi, so he explains that he came to get the ingredients at home since they had the best in town. Just then, the head clerk asks about Lola, and Sawadi says she's gone to spend time with his father since she rarely visits. After gathering the ingredients, Sawadi asks if they had soy sauce and bonito flakes, but the head clerk says he's never heard of them. Just then, the head clerk shows him a dead log mushroom, and says they can't get enough because it grows around mountains and is monopolized by the Eastern merchants. So Sawadi takes the mushroom and wonders if he should try to cultivate it in Torqueva. Hearing this, the head clerk tells him to inform him if he does because there'll be a large demand for it. Shortly afterward, Lola arrives and they both go to the headquarters. When they arrive, Sawadi decides he's going to try to make some. So he instructs Hunt to make noodles while he instructs Seal to boil 2 pots of water and put sardine in one, and then seaweed in the other. Not wanting to be left out, Lola volunteers to write down the recipe while Sawadi focuses on making the dipping sauce. With all hands on deck, 4 samples of dipping sauces were ready in no time. So Sawadi tries out the sauces but isn't impressed with the result. However, Lola and Seal try out the sauces, and they both agree that the 4th sample is the best, surprising Sawadi. When Hunt makes the noodles, Sawadi instructs her to boil them right away. After this, he orders her to take out the noodles and chill them in iced water. So, Sawadi makes ice cubes in a bowl and puts the noodles on top of the ice cubes. With the dish completed, he takes a bite and freaks out, feeling nostalgic. However, Sawadi feels disappointed since his dish turned out to be a udon because of the difference in the thickness of the noodles. When the ladies tasted the dish and gave their reviews, Sawadi decided it was best to leave it as it was. This draws the attention of the other slaves who then wonder what monstrosity was served on the plate. Later, while they head home, Lola consoles her dejected husband. He had improvised using ice to cool the noodles, a rarely used technique where he's from. Just then, Lola says the salmon was tasty with the warm dipping sauce and predicts that it'll soon become a specialty dish when the food stalls begin to sell it. Hearing this, Sawadi explains that the dish turned out to be a udon instead of salmon. After this, he says he has to go back to the headquarters for a bit, and as he leaves, Lola massages his bruised ego. Some days later, at the theater construction site, Sawadi checks out a glass house where he cultivates mushrooms. He had started cultivating the mushrooms after his conversation with the head clerk, but his companions think the idea is ridiculous. The mushrooms had turned out well, so he got help harvesting them and packed them into a cart. Just then he realizes how hot it is in summer, so he calls out to Lola and asks if she'd like to go for a swim at a pool. After the mushroom harvest, Sawadi implements his swimming pool idea for the summer and his harem of slave girls play in the pool while he enjoys the summer vacation with Lola. The privately owned pool he created is the first of its kind in that world. Some days ago, while the slave girls worked on the pool, Sawadi added finishing touches using magic. Just then, Lola arrives and announces it's time for Sawadi to have lunch. During the lunch break, Lola examines a tile that Sawadi made for the pool floor and asks him about how durable it is. In response, Sawadi says it can put up against giant beasts. When she asks him how he came up with the idea, Sawadi explains that it's from his previous world. Afterward, while they talk about the pool construction, the Lupica announces that their lunch has arrived. Just then, Lola announced that she also brought food for everyone, so the workers cheered and thanked her. While Sheena serves their drink from a kettle, Lola points out that she was part of the music band at their wedding. Hearing this, Sheena introduces herself and says she now works at the food stall. Lupica then chips in that Sheena got married recently and is now expecting a baby, so Sawadi congratulates her and hands her a gold coin to cover her expenses. Suddenly, Sheena bows to the ground and pleads with Sawadi, saying she wishes her child could have a normal life. In exchange for that, she's willing to be a slave after delivering the baby. While Sawadi wonders about what is happening, Lola explains that Sheena must think he's trying to buy her baby too. So Sawadi says he's just giving her a present and urges her to get up, while the other slaves watch wondering what she did wrong. When Sheena gets up and leaves without taking the money, Sawadi asks Lupika about what happens to the children of slaves. In response, Lupika says it depends on the master's policy. So Sawadi decides that his slaves' children are not slaves. Shortly after this, the slaves get back to work and the pool is completed. So in the evening when everyone has left, Sawadi thanks Lola for helping her till late at night, but she waves it off, saying she loves doing exercise. Just then, Sawadi hops in the pool and splashes up some water. Meanwhile, Lola has undressed and dived under the pool. While he wonders where she is, she suddenly grabs his foot and pulls him underwater with her. When they resurface, Sawadi says she scared him while Lola talks about how better it would feel to swim in the afternoon. While they enjoy the moment, Sawadi takes a jab at his Riz game and nails it on the first trial. As a reward, his dazed wife flashes him with her milk cannons. But the OnlyFans session was short-lived as Lola turns into Katara for a bit and tries to drown Sawadi for rizzing her like that. The next day, Sawadi meets with Chicken to discuss making swimsuits, which wasn't a thing in that world at the time. Seeing her enthusiasm about the idea, he hands it over to her since he's busier than a mosquito at a nudist beach. Sawadi reserved the pool for himself and Lola on weekends, while the slaves could use it as a wellness resort during the weekdays. Sometime later, at the headquarters, Sawadi meets with Chicken and discusses how his instant fried noodles were doing on the market. The responses had been underwhelming, so Chicken suggests that he try selling it to the caravans or the street peddler unions since it has a long shelf life. When Sawadi agrees to run with the idea, Chicken adds that they could sell the instant noodles at their food stores too. After all, customers buy it every morning, and the manual labor slaves snack on it. Just then Chicken mentions that Mince buys instant noodles in large quantities and experiments with different seasonings. Hearing this, Sawadi wonders how she could be a glutton despite being reserved in nature. The topic of their conversation then shifts to the pool. Chicken expresses her concern about the recent drowning incidents at the pool, so Sawadi determines that they must find a solution to that problem. When he thinks of going to the pool to monitor the situation, he imagines Lola transforming into an Oni when she learns he's just subscribed to Patreon. After thinking for a while, he gets an idea to use a facade. So, later at the pool, while the slaves have fun, some ladies request beers at the bar and Sawadi attends to them faking a feminine voice and looking like he lost a bet with genetics. Shocked by the monstrosity that stands before them, the ladies take their beers and leave while Sawadi revels in his acting and disguise masterpiece. However, the girls walk up to Roast, who is enjoying a beer, to ask why their master is working at the bar. Unsurprised, Roast says she has no idea what's going on in his mind and tells the girls to tell everyone to keep it a secret. After this, Roast gets in the pool and figures Sawadi must have heard about the drowning and has come to monitor the situation. Later, when Sawadi and Lola are alone at the pool, Lola comments that the recent liveliness feels like it never happened. She then asks if things will remain the same till the next year. In response, Sawadi says he's not even thinking about that. But Lola knows him better and says she trusts him to come up with something. While Torfu swims in the pool, they both mention ideas of what to explore next and then agree to go fishing. In the kingdom of Crownia, the Jaha fish is a firm-fleshed white fish that resides in a habitat haunted by dangerous monsters, making it difficult to fish. However, the few people who dare to hunt these fishes sell them as luxury food despite their muddy taste. Sawadi had been craving delicious fish, so he decided to start breeding this fish and remove its muddy taste. After a while, the results of the breeding turned out to be beyond Sawadi's expectations. Seeing that he's bitten more than he can chew, Sawadi decides to start a fish business. Shortly after this, the once regarded luxury fish became a staple food in households and restaurants. Using his pool as a pond and his farmed fish, Sawadi does a fishing trial with some help from his fish farm staff. So during the trial, the slaves try to pull out a fish that has bitten the bait while Sawadi and Lola motivate them. Eventually, the fish was pulled out of the pond and one of the girls grabbed it. Sawadi then asks them how it feels to be fishing for the first time, and the girl says she thought she was going to die. Facing Lola, he asks if fishing was that intense in her hometown, and she says fishing is not an intense sport. Just then, Sawadi predicts that people might enjoy such intensity and decides to prepare sturdier fishing rods. Afterward, while Sawadi feasts on the fish, Lola watches him and comments that nothing beats the taste of your catch. She then recalls her fishing days with her big brother on their father's boat. Startled, Sawadi asks if she wishes to go back to her hometown, and she explains that she hasn't been there since she joined the army. In addition to this, she then says she'll go to her hometown with him when the time is right. Looking into the fire, Sawadi talks about his previous life and how he was forced to overwork himself to death. However, he explains that since he met Lola, he started thinking about his past life like a bad memory. Just then, Sawadi says he would choose to stay in this present world even if he could go back to the previous. Surprised by this, Lola reached for his hand and said that the world would feel like a desert without him. The next day, Sawadi's grandfather speaks to him about his expectations for the next Thanksgiving festival since the street has been named after his family name. Shortly after, at the shop, while Sawadi eats with chicken, she reminds him that he's been tricked into organizing the festival on his street. In response, Sawadi says he can't turn down the request because his grandfather has been taking care of him and his brothers. He then blames the slave girls for funding the street development without his consent when the street was named after his family. Just then, Chicken says they can make it happen with the manpower at their disposal. She then adds that the retired slaves are also willing to help out. Reacting to Sawadi's surprise, Chicken says none of them can disobey him since they're still his slaves after all. Sawadi then asks Chicken to prepare a work shift schedule for him. When she asks him what the festival will be like, Sawadi smiles and says she can trust him with that. Afterward, at the headquarters, Sawadi assembles some of his slaves and announces that he has some important tasks to delegate. So he assigns the woodworkers to produce musical instruments for the festival and the civil engineer team to construct things at the main venue. In conclusion, he announces that the deadline is short and boosts their morale. Later at the Magic Academy, Sawadi lies under a tree a while going through some papers. Just then, Lola approaches him and asks if something is stressing him out. Surprised to see her, he asks if she's done with her work, and she says it was just some report meeting. Lola then lights a cigarette and asks if he's worried about eternal magic crystals. In response, Sawadi says he's worried about the songs for the festival. While letting out some smoke, Lola suggests that he let his band compose the songs. However, Sawadi explains that they've been busy. The band was put together for the wedding but has become popular and is now performing at people's events. So, Lola suggests again that Sawadi buys more slaves, but Sawadi says it's not easy to find disabled slaves with musical talent. To make her point clear, Lola reiterates that she was talking about healthy and normal musician slaves. Suddenly, scales fell off his eyes, so he decided to go slave shopping. After shopping for slaves and healing them all, he gives a welcome speech and tells the slaves why they were bought. While he talks about the deadline, the slaves chatted away without listening. Just then, Moimo, the band leader, gets pissed and screams some sense into their skulls. After making the slaves realize they were bought at a discount, she commands them to pay their respects and devote their lives to their master. However, Sawadi calls Moimo and asks her to chill out since she almost blew his eardrums. So he tells the fidgeting slaves to ask Moimo if they had any questions. When Sawadi went to get healthy slaves, he surprisingly got disabled ones only, and was told by Perseus that everyone wanted to be his slave. Just then, Sawadi decides that he'll buy slaves regardless of their age and gender. While thinking about what happened with the new slaves, Sawad wonders if he should make an easy-to-understand employee handbook. Meanwhile, the festival preparations continue as planned. Finally, the day of the Thanksgiving festival arrives. When the festival begins, the venue has been decorated and lots of people troop around. While the drums roll, people chat while eating and drinking and the musicians play their music. There are lots of snacks and people drinking at the venue, so Lola tries out a snack and lights up. After this, she tries out another dish while Sawadi plays the food analyst. After a while of exploring, Lola asks why most of the food available is flour-based and Sawadi responds saying it's because the region is a wheat producer. He then adds that his family currently trades wheat so it's cheaper to buy, leaving Lola impressed with his business acumen. Just then, they spot Vongo and some security slaves gathered. When they get closer, they discover some pickpockets were caught by Vongo. Impressed by this, Sawadi rubs her head while Lola watches amused. Suddenly, a lady bumps into Lola and falls to the ground, so she offers to help the lady up and asks if she's hurt. However, the lady apologizes too and says she's alright. Just then, the lady asks for directions to the theater and Lola shows her where to go. So the lady thanks her and Lola hands her a cigarette to give the receptionist for a front row seat. After the lady runs off, Sawadi and Vongo join Lola and ask if that was another pickpocket. Shortly after, as they walk the streets, Lola asks Sawadi about the feather show, so he narrates the story of an ordinary girl who gets reincarnated as a villain and the things she did to escape a bad ending. After this, Lola says the main character is like him, but he disagrees and says he likes to take his profit from people's profits, unlike the main character. At that moment, Jilin announces that the Lantern Festival dance is about to begin and explains its significance while inviting the people to join the dance. Just then, the music begins while the crowd watches in amazement. However, Sawadi's attention was drawn to some people linking up, so he thought about starting a matchmaking party. Just then, Lola invites him to enjoy the festival with her, so he takes her hand while the party lasts through the night. Sometime later at the adventurers' home base, the adventurers show their skills while Roast and Sawadi watch. After the performance, the crowd cheers and the frustrated Sawadi asks Roast why he has to watch the performance. Roast then explains that they needed to show him the results of their daily practice since he rarely comes around. Sawadi then says he only came to see the newly recruited musician slaves. He then explains that he gave them an important job to compose a song for a big noble. However, he got busy and forgot about it, even though they kept submitting the composed music. So, they tried to reach him while eating, in the toilet, and on the streets, but got captured by the adventurers and security guards. Now the musicians are being forced to take the new employee training. In response, Roast says everything is going without a hitch. So, Sawadi apologizes for not visiting the adventurers group and acknowledges that he cares about them and knows that they've been giving their best. After this, he asks if he could go home and Roast laughs out loud, surprising everyone and Sawadi. She then apologizes to her comrades and pulls out a comb from her treasure chest. While combing her hair, Roast explains that the adventurers don't do what they do for the recognition, or because it's their duty, but because they owe their lives to Sawadi and are grateful to him. So their only way to express their gratitude for him is to show him what they can do. So she tells him to sit tight and enjoy the show till the end. Feeling frustrated, Sawadi says they're all annoying and Roast responds by saying they're slaves after all. The next day, Sawadi decides to do something nice for the adventurers, so he visits Chicken to discuss his plans with her. After making his requests, Chicken gladly accepts them. So they sit to make plans while Isuka, a new management trainee, stands by and takes notes and asks questions. She has been made the supervisor of the coming event, so Sawadi answers her questions while she takes more notes. Isuka previously worked at a flower market and has a soft and timid personality. Just then, Chicken says there's no need to rush things since Isuka is smart and tactful, unlike Jilin. Meanwhile, outside the office, Jilin suspects someone is talking about her. Back in the office, Chicken advises Isuka to be bolder, while Sawadi thinks he believes in her because she's easy to read, so he tells her that he expects good things from her. Later, the day of the event arrives, and it is announced that the sports festival is about to start. Thanks for watching till the end. Comment "Estimer is goated" if want to find out what happens next. Leave a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video and subscribe to the channel for similar content.